Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to do something a little bit different, and I think it's important to recognize I have an immense amount of faith in the city's leadership team. Our leadership team is present here today, and ultimately I would love nothing more than to have every single one of them join me up on the stage today. But today I've picked 3 to come up and join me on the stage. And we're gonna introduce them in just a second, but as a starting point, I want to take the time to introduce Mayor Dexter, who's with us here today. Councilmember Brendan Meyer. And Councilmember Miller. So we're going to go ahead and take the stage, and I'm going to start by introducing you to Sarina Carrizosa, our Finance Director. She's been with us for going on 6 years now at the city as Finance Director. I'm also going to ask to come up on the stage with me Mike Healy, who is our Public Works and Utilities Director. He's been with us going on 2 years now. And I'm also asking Chief Brian Smith, who has been with us, I believe, going on 7 years now, maybe a little bit more. So come on up to the stage and we'll get started. All right, so today we're going to be talking about the state of the city. And this is a really important presentation opportunity to share with all of you what's going on. I think it's so important to share that we take a great deal of pride in the hard work that our city council members do on a regular basis to ensure that the city is running successfully, but also the hard work of every single city employee that they dedicate every single day to make the city function. We have a great deal of departments and divisions that put together things every day to provide customer service and to ultimately serve you as community members. So I want to start with what really sets the tone for the city of Port Angeles, and that's our strategic plan. And when you think about our strategic plan, it's important. We've got 4 specific focus areas. Number 1 is housing and homelessness. We want to ensure at the end of the day that every resident in this community has a safe and affordable place to live. That again is our number 1 focus. As a secondary focus, we have building our commercial districts. And I think it's really important to recognize the Chamber of Commerce, Elevate Port Angeles, and the work that they have put in to ensure we are seeing things move forward with our downtown waterfront district. We're really excited to have that be part of our strategic plan. Thirdly, the number 3 item is building capacity and ensuring that we can keep up with the utility needs and services and the capital projects that ultimately support all of you as residents of this community. And so that's something that we have been working on for a number of years, and you'll hear later today that we're making a lot of progress on that. And finally, high-performing relationships. Knowing that what we do as a city is something that cannot be successful without the help of all of you, without the help of multiple different organizations in this community. So I want to start by looking a little bit at the pulse of the community, some key indicators, and talking about a bit of metrics. To start out with, sales tax is doing very well in this community. We've seen about $175,000 increase over last year relative to sales tax. From a lodging tax perspective, we've seen that grow by about $180,000. We have seen real estate excise tax, no surprise there due to interest rates. We've seen that drop by about $165,000. But I think those are some important indicators that we like to share with you every year. Additionally, we look at the permit metrics, and we've seen over 460 building permits issued in 2023. We have an additional 17 building permits pending. I think it's really important to recognize we have seen a 53% increase in number of housing units compared to 2022. That's a big deal, and that's part of our number 1 priority. So I want to drill down and talk a bit more about housing and the effort that's going on specifically to ensure we're getting affordable and infill housing growth in our community. One of the amazing accomplishments that ultimately Council passed by ordinance this year is the first ever comprehensive fee waiver program. It's the first of its kind in Washington, and ultimately it waives the fee for 15 different housing permit types as well as 25 different permit applications. The goal being to build the toolbox that we have of incentives directed at housing, and ultimately these are the different applications where you see that fee waiver. It's a big deal. We've got to do more as a city to really open the doors to allow new housing development. Another major element that was approved last year were permit-ready plans, the ability to have plans available. That way, a developer does not have to take the time to actually invest in plans, take 6 to 8 months to get their plan set ready, or to have to go through a permitting process. These plans are pre-permitted, again, paving the way for individuals who want to invest in an accessory dwelling unit, a duplex, or a townhome within this community. So we've also developed a more detailed website which highlights some of those housing-related things that we are investing in as a city and ultimately helping customers access the information they need to be successful with housing. When you look at some of our other initiatives that relate to housing, I think it's so important to recognize how this community really engaged in the short-term rental public engagement exercise. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to participate. I want to thank Council for spending the time to ensure we got a good compromise result. That doesn't mean we are happy with it. It does mean we have a good compromise outcome for a community that has so many diverse views on a really difficult issue. One of the other major efforts we have moving forward is our comprehensive plan review and update. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit more about our new approach to housing development. We have been building incentives for over 7 years now. It's time that we do more, and we're looking at a new approach, a project called the Housing Pipeline Pilot Project, where we will actually be working with partners to actually move housing units forward in this community. It's a big deal and a big change relative to what we've been doing in the past. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Director Carrizosa for an update on some of our financial direction.
I'm happy to be here today to take a moment to talk about our direction forward that was carefully laid out in the city's 2024 budget. The 2024 budget sets the course for the coming year by setting and earmarking funding for the projects and services that are outlined in various city plans, including our comprehensive plan, our housing plan, of course, our strategic plan, and our capital facilities plan. So really what the budget does is it sets the expectations and realities of those plans. In the 2024 budget, we had a budget theme of strengthening our foundation and investing in our core services. And within that, we had 4 focus areas, including investing in upgrades to infrastructure, enhancing the customer service experience, increased public safety, and promoting environmental resilience. And while there are a lot of really exciting and great things that have occurred in the 2024 budget, just a few highlights include that we have built in promoting housing. We're focusing our funding on moving forward capital projects and looking at grant administration, which does include increasing staffing in order to meet those needs, as well as to meet our growing services and as well as growing state-funded or state unfunded mandates. We are also maintaining community programs for public safety, and we're including funding for the comprehensive plan update as well as for climate planning. And so just taking a look back at 2023 as we ended our year, Manager West did highlight a few of these, but in all areas of major tax collection, we did meet or exceed our budget expectations for the 2023 year, so that's really great news for the city. Our sales tax increase was about 3.7% as compared to 2022, and that's also reflective at an over 3% increase for the Housing and Transportation Benefit District tax because they are collected very similarly. Within our sales tax category, we have 3 major categories within the city that for collection, including retail sales, construction, and food and accommodation services. We did see growth year over year on all three of those, so that's a good indicator for us. Our real estate excise tax did have a significant decrease, as was mentioned, but did meet our budget expectations, and so we will anticipate that the projects that are outlined with that funding will still be able to move forward. And our lodging tax saw another record-breaking year at a 15.8% increase as compared to 2023, with $1.3 million collected overall. And so looking at our revenue collection is really important as we are considering our budget and our financial picture, because it does set what our economic stability and our trends are. And it's also reflective of all the work that you all do every day to help support our city and to help it thrive. And when looking at our revenue, it's important to also consider our utilities. So the city is both challenged and committed to ensuring that our utility rates remain affordable. And so staff and council have worked very diligently to ensure that whenever possible, minimal impacts are seen for that, and that we are considering the needs of the utility for both operational and infrastructure needs as we're moving that forward. And so though we do have some increases planned for our rates in 2024, we're pleased that we were able to keep our electric rate constant with what we've seen in the past, and that we were able to keep all of our utilities stable. And so sales and property tax make up two of the largest tax collections citywide. So what these do is they support programs within our general fund, including our police, fire, parks, and streets departments. And so because of that, I just want to take a quick moment to kind of provide a brief overview of the overall picture of sales and property tax. So starting with sales tax, a few slides ago when we mentioned the general sales tax collection, that's that 1% that you see here on this graphic. And within that 1%, the city actually only collects about 0.84% of that tax collection, with the remaining amount going to the county and the state for administrative charges. The city also receives 1/10 of 1% for emergency communications, criminal justice, and for affordable housing, as well as 0.3% of 1% for our transportation benefit districts. And it's important to note that those items are considered special. They are voter approved and must be used for the purposes in which they were collected for. So overall, the city of Port Angeles has an 8.9% sales tax within the city limits, and of that amount, 1.44% comes back to the city for local use. Looking at our property tax revenue, the state has a restriction of a 1% increase annually for property tax on the levy. For the city of Port Angeles, that equates to about $50,000 a year. And within the city of Port Angeles in 2024, the levy rate will be $8.59 per every $1,000 of assessed valuation. And the city's portion of that is $1.63, or roughly 19% of the property tax collection. And so these two items really are included to demonstrate the limitations on our available revenue sources for balancing our budget and for providing the services to our community. And so because of that, one of the biggest challenges that the city has is looking at our revenue options in order to support our budget, in order to support our community, and to continue those services and projects that we have included in our plans. And so our city council has already taken some steps to look at the available revenue options in order to meet that capacity and the need for our budget. And they have selected 6 items that they are looking at and considering, 3 of which have already been implemented, and they're signified with the check marks on the screen, including our transportation benefit district tax increase that will support our street department. We have reviewed our fines and fees, particularly for our permits for fire and for cemetery, something that hasn't been done in over 10 years. And we've implemented a short-term rental fee. The remaining 3 items for PennCom sales tax increase, the border area fuel tax, and the vacant property fee will continue to be evaluated and considered for the future. And so no review of the financials could be complete unless we take a quick look at our debt portfolio. And so it's really exciting for us to see that we are at a 20-year low in our debt portfolio. If we look at 2024, which is circled in orange there, we're back to almost where we were in 2004 when we first took out the debt for the landfill bluff stabilization and the CSO projects. Both were the biggest projects that the city's undertaken. And so as we're descending our mountain of debt, which is exciting because it frees up funding sources for other uses, in 2024, that will be the last year of our downtown water main replacement debt. It will also signify 2 years left of general fund debt for that transfer to the Western Urban Growth Area. So the City of Port Angeles takes our fiscal responsibility very seriously, and whenever possible, we do look for savings within our budget. In 2024, we have saved $260,000 through the early redemption of the water and wastewater bonds, which was part of a bigger project in looking at savings through debt that has occurred over the last few years, which allowed us to save over $3.5 million since 2020. Additionally, in partnership with OLICAP, the city was able to distribute $779,000 in COVID and utility assistance to our community in 2023. And as I mentioned, we do not take lightly the fiscal stewardship that has been entrusted to us. And we try whenever possible to be as transparent as possible with the city finances. And so the way that we do that is we open our books for our community to review. Those are all available on the website for you to review at any time. We also submit our annual reports and our city's budget to the Government Finance Officers Association for consideration of an award. And in 2003, the city did receive an award for excellence in financial reporting and for the budget, which is the highest distinction available for financial standards. We also did receive a clean audit from the State Auditor's Office in 2023 as well. And so with that, I thank you for the time to share some financial highlights, and I'll turn the time back over to Manager West.
So the next topic that we're going to be covering is that investment that we need to make in capital facilities projects. We have over 40 million projects planned for 2024 for capital projects. 12.8 million of those are transportation projects. And if you look at the next 5-year period, we have $132 million in projects planned for this community. That's a big deal, and that's one of those reasons why we're working on capacity. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Director Healy, who's going to talk about some of those projects.
Thank you, Nathan. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Great. This is a magic room. Usually when you hand it over to the Leggett City Council, when you introduce me, everybody leaves on the public works stuff, because this is great. I'm enjoying this. It's great to be with you this afternoon to talk about this. As Nathan pointed out, we have significant investment over the next year. We're at $40 million next year. I'll put my Jim Cramer hat on and say, if you know anyone starting a company to sell orange cones, invest in them right now. $40 million next year alone, and $132 million in capital investment over the next 5 years. I'd like to talk about a little bit where we've been over the last year and what we have coming up. You know, we all know how important Race Street is to each and every one of us. And I want to really publicly state that I appreciate everyone's patience, not calling me every single day with the detours and the like. But Race Street and the work that we did there last year, sure, it inconvenienced a lot of people, and it upset our normal traffic flows. But it was really important to get done. If you look at the investment there and how that street looks today, it is a tremendous change. You know, so what did we do? We replaced almost a quarter mile, a little over a quarter mile of 10-foot deep water main. We constructed 35 new ADA sidewalk ramps, paving, installation of new pedestrian signals, and we planted thousands of flowers that'll give a great outlook for our visitors and tourists alike come spring. I'd like to spend a little time talking about partnerships. You know, as much as we like to think we can do it all alone, we can't. We have built some great partnerships over the years with our county friends and neighboring cities. And one of the new partners that came on board that we were fortunate enough to collaborate with this year was the Trails Coalition. Our partnership with the Trails Coalition ended up with a successful raise grant of $16.3 million that'll expand. It'll pay for the design of the extension of the Olympic Discovery Trail across 20 communities, starting in Port Angeles all the way to Bainbridge Island. What a tremendous benefit to pass on to generations to come. Another great partner is WashDOT. We work great with WashDOT. They have some projects coming up. We have projects coming up. They help with our snow plowing. We help them with different projects. And our street crews and WashDOT's maintenance crews get together tremendously to make the impacts on you almost seamless. We partnered with McKinley Mill this year to send all of our recycled cardboard from the solid waste facility over to them for recycling, saving it a trip to Seattle. You know, Fletcher, we look forward to a great partnership with you. We also partnered with our great county staff and Sheriff King on building a new county-wide joint public safety facility, which will, when it's constructed, will also be the new home to PennCom. You know, with our partnership with WashDOT, one of the things that we were able to gain this year was a $5.65 million highway traffic improvement safety grant through WashDOT. How many people like the peeps and cuckoos in the downtown area? Or maybe the fact that when you leave here today, you're probably going to get 3 red lights before you get to Lincoln? Well, if you like those, enjoy them while you can. Because I'm here to tell you they're going away with this project, starting very soon. Matter of fact, the pre-construction meeting was yesterday. We're going to be installing new signal software in 13 intersections throughout the first and front corridor. Now, that upgraded software will be more traffic-centric instead of strict timing. So you'll be able to, it'll sense and visualize the traffic, get it to the software, and actually make it more efficient. It's also a lot safer. It's also safer for pedestrians because it gives clear and safe pedestrian intervals to cross. That project will also include the construction of a bunch of curb ramps and 50 ADA compliant rampways throughout the project area. I'll let you in on a little secret too about this project. About the peeps and cuckoos, we can actually use volume control, so you can hear it in the crosswalk, but not so much in our favorite bookstore in Moss. This year we're going to a significant investment on 8th Street. We're going to pave 8th Street. We're going to add bike lanes that will then connect with other bike lane infrastructure on adjoining streets. We have until this Friday, we've had it up for about 3 or 4 weeks, a survey as well as an open forum column where you can put your comments in. We'd really like to hear from you because there are a number of different design options that we can choose from. You know, I mentioned partnerships a moment ago, and we had last year a number of our slurry seal projects canceled because the bids came in so tremendously high. So we partnered with our county friends, the County Public Works, and we jumped on their bid for slurry rock because as we polled the contractors afterwards, we found out that because there isn't a local source for rock, that was the primary reason for the high bids. So we jumped on the county bid. It gave them better prices because of the increased quantities, and we ended up saving roughly $200,000. So now we'll supply the rock to the contractors. You know, I mentioned earlier we have great friends with WashDOT, and they fund a lot of our projects. And because we have two highways coming through town, we on occasion get a little disruption, and we're going to have that this year, unfortunately, but well worth it. They're going to go for this year they're going to start to construct the fish passage over Tumwater project. That'll cause, originally it was going to cause a detour for about 9 months. It'll now take them roughly 3 to 4 months of detour. So please have patience for those guys in the orange vests. They're working as fast and as hard as they can. This is a beneficial project. Our staff has been working with WashDOT to come up with solutions, and we've cut the detours, as I said, in half. So in collaboration with them. We've also, because of our partnership and because of the inconvenience it's going to cause you, we also were able to gain a couple of things from them. They're going to do pavement repair downtown before the start of the project, and because of the inconvenience it's going to cause you and possibly some damage to our streets, they're going to fund a $900,000 downtown project, a paving project for us, thanks to Jonathan Bowmer, city engineer. He's a tough negotiator. I'm glad I didn't have to interview with him. Let me just take you downtown and talk about a few things we did last year, a few things we've got planned for this year. The City Hall railing project is complete. It's not only more beautiful, thank you. It's not only more beautiful, but it's a lot safer than the railings that were there in the past. As attractive as they were for years and years and years. Anyone know where this is? Yeah, I guess so. I thought I could pull one off on you, but no, this is a project that has been a long time coming, and this is the way it looked this last weekend. I want to give kudos to our engineering staff who got a bunch of federal agencies to greenlight this project and get those poor trees out of those fenced jails. Our City Pier Tower is funded thanks to the LTAC committee. I really appreciate your support of that project, making sure that this iconic structure lives on. The contracts are signed. The contractor is fabricating steel as we speak and will be on site very soon. And we hope to have this completed in advance of the tourist season. I'm ready for that end of the deck to open up as well. Starting very soon will be a $400,000 downtown sidewalk and tree replacement project. Again, we were able to get some great bids and move this project forward where trees have uprooted the sidewalk. We're not going to be able to take care of everything on Oak and Laurel and our front and Oak and Laurel and Railroad, but it'll be a really good start, and it'll make for a better pedestrian platform. I'll talk citywide improvements a little bit, and one of those certainly is wastewater capacity. Manager West talked about housing and the like. Well, we do have some older infrastructure, and with that comes a little push and pull. One of those is wastewater capacity. Last year we replaced, we completed the first part of a wastewater capacity project that will added capacity to about a quarter to a third of the city. It caused a force main on Marine Drive. This year we'll be putting a gravity line on 4th Street. And just for those of you that have maybe drive Marine Drive from time to time, maybe I'll shorten the Q&A a little bit by telling you that we're out for bid on Marine Drive pavement curb to curb. So we're looking forward to completing that project this spring and summer as well. You know, Port Angeles is a wonderful place to be with the mountains on one side of you and the waterfront on the other. And It's easy to see why preservation and environmental stewardship is extremely important, not only to this community, but to each and every one of our public works professionals. Not only because it's the right thing to do, but we're residents here as well. To that end, I'm extremely proud to let you know that last year, our wastewater treatment staff, as well as our water treatment staff, both won state awards for excellence in operations. Very proud of everyone, but especially those guys. You know, Sarina talked earlier about city finances and the like, and we can't do it alone. And we're in a tremendous environment to get federal and state grants. And to date, our engineering staff, along with some community partners and who write letters of support and all, we've received $28.6 million in-house to fund 22 current and future projects without touching our local funds too much. Just want to talk about recruitment a little bit if I can. You know, a year ago, we had 3 linemen in our light ops department and nine lineman positions. So as you can tell, and I really want to thank those linemen that, I mean, they didn't have any time off at all. Those 3 really carried the ball for us. And the city council last year raised the salaries of linemen to a more competitive level, which helped us hire the 6 new linemen and fill all those positions. But it also made me an enemy in Alaska of one little small electric utility up there where we raided 3 of their staff. But that's allowed us to do a number of things. You know, it's allowed us, and when I say this, you know, just because we have those linemen, we're still susceptible to outages and the like, whether it be from animals or wind or vehicles. But now we can do things that harden our system to better serve you. You know, and I should backtrack a little bit and just share with you that we hired those 6 linemen and we raised those salaries, and we also didn't raise rates last year, and it was all in there. So it's a testament to not only you good folks, but what we've been able to how frugal we have been in light ops and public works as a whole. But getting back, you know, it's allowed us to harden the system. It's allowed us to replace poles on the McKinley line. It's allowed us to put in some more underground. Having 2 crews versus 1 guy and 3 trucks, you can get a lot more done. And we have. And we look forward to, we even hired a new deputy director out there, Ken Hammond, who's with us today. We even, you know, everything is just clicking out there. We're getting rid of deferred maintenance, and we're really moving forward with new projects that, again, harden our system. You know, lastly, before I give this back to Nathan, I'd just like to say that, you know, I am one of the most fortunate guys in the world. I get to work with some great people each and every day. Some of them are sitting over there. You know, I mentioned Jonathan Bohm and Ken and Eric Wheatley, who runs our field crews and water and wastewater, and our superintendents. And they're really a tremendous staff that I'm fortunate enough to work with each and every day. And Jessica Toth over there, who keeps me in line. She's got by far the hardest job of all. Anyway, I did want to just lastly thank all of you for your interest in our great community, and I'll now give this back to Nathan. This is a great room, Nathan. I really like it.
Thank you, Mike. So next I want to share a little bit on what we're working on to enhance the customer service experience. Specifically, we've added a number of positions so that when you come to City Hall, ultimately you receive better service. We've added a community development technician, a housing administrator, a front desk attendant, and a communications and records management coordinator. All of those positions have been made permanent full-time in order to serve you better. I think it's important too to share we are investing after a request for proposals in a major new enterprise platform at the city from a computer perspective and how we serve you digitally as well as online. It stands to make great improvements relative to how you pay your utility bills, to how you apply for permits, and it's something we're really excited about. So now I get the benefit to turn it over to Chief Smith, who also has the privilege of talking a little bit about the fire department, which can always be fun.
So thank you, Nathan. And can you guys hear me okay? Yes. Perfect. So yeah, I do get to talk about the fire department, which I'm honored to talk about the fire department and my good friend, Chief Darryl Sharp. And so all the themes you heard from Mike and Sarina and Nathan actually apply to us in public safety as well. Partnerships, fiscal responsibility, you know, you name it. But for us, you know, we're one of the most expensive parts of the city's budget, and you can't do public safety, you know, at a discount, is what I would say. You know, we're money, people, equipment intensive, best practice intensive, and that's what you're paying for. But in the environment that Chief Sharp and I live and Chief Vieta live, I call it a tough neighborhood, okay? And it's not a tough neighborhood for Manager West because I have the greatest boss in the world. I have tons of support, and I have Mayor Dexter, whose support, you know, Brendan and Amy, they're here for us all the time. But you know, you follow the politics of Washington, and it isn't just policing, it's also fire and public safety. We live in a difficult world that requires us to be advocating and working hard to find good people, to keep them, and to find ways to improve our ability to do our jobs. So in this picture here, of course, the governor is telling me, don't hire away any troopers, you know, by the way. And sure enough, a couple months ago, we had an excellent candidate who we were in a foot race with, who the State Patrol got this excellent officer candidate before we did. So I guess he won that one. But the tough neighborhood that we're in is partly external, you know, factors and just things that we live with. And, you know, the slides has 34 police officers, 23,000 calls for service, and us relying on mutual aid and partnerships for work during peak times. What that means for us is that, you know, the 23,000 calls is about 3 an hour, and we can be sure that when you call us for something really important, all of our officers are tied up on 1 or 2 calls. Like, I can guarantee that. You know, some of you in the room have probably had the Elwha Police and the Sheriff's Department come and actually handle the call in the city for us because we didn't have anybody available. Now, 23,000 would have been 26,000 about 7 years ago. And some of the things I'm going to talk about moving forward is why it's, for us at least, it's 23 versus 26,000. Because you can increase your staff a number of ways. Getting more people and money is one way, and we really support that. But also problem solving upstream and bringing more partners in to what we're doing is partly how those numbers have come down. Fire department, fun fact, and you maybe have heard this before, the 40th busiest one station department in the whole country. So the fire service in the country has thousands and thousands and thousands of one station fire departments. That's not that unique. I grew up in a town that had 2 in California, and the next door one had 1. So they're the 40th busiest. Last year, 5,700 calls for service. That's 15.74 calls per day. And if you know what a call for the fire department is, you just don't show up, do what you have to do, and then leave. There's a whole bunch of work at the back end. So that's a lot of calls for a firefighter, and it's, you know, 200 plus if they're at full staffing, and it's 300, almost 400 if they're at what we call minimum staffing. And in there is 1,200 patient transports, because in this city, you have a fire department that's a full service, you know, paramedic-based fire department utility that transports If you need to be transported in Port Angeles with a paramedic, you'll be transported. But how do we get to recruitment, retention, and best practice and being the best at what we do is that we go outward. We don't go inward. We go outward. You know, our accreditation is an every 4-year sort of test on 130 standards that are best practice that we have to show that we're meeting. But it's really living it every day. And Chief Vieta has a lot to do with our staff that make that happen. But we have to divert time, energy, and resources, because when you get accredited, you don't get to like get an 85% and get accredited. You got to get 100% on the test. And it's one of those things that causes me to lose sleep every 4 years for like the last 6 months. Not that I don't trust our staff, because it's a really difficult thing to carry off. But we've done 4 in a row. It's every 4 years. I'm really proud of our staff that have, you know, been able to make that happen. The couple of multi-agency things just to talk about them. Kitsap and Clallam have an investigative response team called KCERT. That's to handle really what we're mandated legislatively to do with independent investigations. But it's the big cases, the use of deadly force, the complex homicides, and we have a formal and a leadership role in KCERT. Again, Chief Vieta is one of the command level people in KCERT. Detective Sergeant Corey Malone is one of the investigative supervisors. So what that means is our detective unit is spending a percentage of their time, not even in this county, responding to major incidents in the region if that's where we're called. Now, what does that get us? Well, it gets us expertise, it gets us training, it gets us bragging rights, and it also attracts people to want to work for us, because our detectives are really the pros from Dover. If you've ever worked with our detective unit, they're highly regarded in Western Washington as some of the best at what they do. But that's our willingness to participate in something that we had to fight to get in, and Chief Vieta could talk about how hard we worked to be recognized by them to get on board, really ahead of the legislative mandates that required us to do it anyway. You guys know about OPNET, the drug task force. That's 2 counties. We've had a detective sergeant in OPNET for 20 years. We've got Josh Pallas, our detective sergeant. Josh is one of the best in the business. And his team, which is federal, state, local, and county agents and investigators working out of the Border Patrol station, that's a best practice. You don't wait for things to happen to you. You go after the worst of the worst, and you try to dismantle drug trafficking organizations before they make your lives any more difficult than they already are. Full staffing and onboarding. So the operations part of the police department, which is records, detective, patrol, admin, we've like struggled, but we've done it. We've maintained full staffing. We've lost people. We've hired people. We're very fortunate. It takes about a year and a half plus from when you discover someone to when you've hired, trained, and they're actually able to function. So on PENCOM, which is the division of the police department that runs the 911 center, it's even harder. Like that job, believe it or not, is a job that requires multitasking and abilities to do things in a really changing, complex environment. So last year we were able to onboard and bring in 3 new communications officers. That's like adding to the complement that we already have. That barely keeps up with the recruitment and retention, but that was a big deal and a big accomplishment. And that was a lot of help and cooperation from our city manager, from Abby in Human Resources, Abby Fountain, and Lacey. The work it takes to recruit people in one of the hardest jobs anywhere has paid off. So also a major accomplishment, these characters right here on the screen, you might see in an apparatus or an ambulance. They're some of the best firefighters and paramedics anywhere in Washington. And they're very excited about the fact that they've just completed a 15-month rigorous paramedic training course, which is really 2 years of training just to be a paramedic and another year on top of that to have firefighter training and capability. So it's years and years worth of time to get these 3 folks to pose for that picture. The fire department last year, according to Chief Sharp, logged about 8,000 hours of routine and specialized training. And why that is important is if they're on, say, 16 calls every shift, they can't train. They actually can't have the capacity they need to handle a major structure fire, do all the other things our fire department is required to do. So it's all about staffing and funding for us and having enough people to do our jobs and to be good at our jobs. So some of the other major accomplishments, and back to, we heard about partnerships. Our city attorney, Bill Bloor, is sitting over here, and we have the good fortune to have a fairly new program for the police department, which is code enforcement. So we have 1.5 FTEs, one full-time officer that's a fully sworn police officer, came to us from San Diego Police Department, and a half-time officer that's got a limited commission, supervised by our Operations Sergeant Clay Reif and Chief Vieta. So that's a pretty small crew to handle major sort of problems that you see in the community, of which there's far more than we can address quickly. But the property that the picture of is, that first photo isn't exactly as bad as it looked, because you guys drove by it every day. You knew how bad it looked for 10 years and how hard it was in the legal system and in just the world we live in to get that property cleaned up. But through a bunch of partnerships, and some of that's private sector and property owner partnerships, it looks like now that second slide. So also in partnerships, community paramedicine, if you remember former Chief Ken Dubuque talking about this concept about 6 years ago about community paramedics. Brand new concept, nobody was doing it anywhere. And what that is that's hiring paramedics in addition to the duty crew that aren't, as we call it, chasing the radio. And it's sort of a parallel to rediscovery and having outreach officers and social workers and case managers, people that can stay behind. So the community paramedic program was launched with community support, city council support, and a commitment from the fire department. And then the problem of fentanyl really takes hold after we have our community paramedic program already launched. So it's one of those things that it's an external problem that we didn't get to pick, and it's as bad as it gets, but we already have a very robust, well-regarded, well-respected community paramedicine program that can deal with problems upstream. As meanwhile, we're seeing people with behavioral, social, and if you understand the fentanyl, it really damages people. It's very hard to get people back, and it requires a lot of work from all of us. Fire department averages 4 overdose calls per week in 2023. PAPD averages the same overdose calls because we go to those calls with fire. And I have talked about this before in other forums. I would have loved to have seen what would have happened if we hadn't have had fentanyl in our rediscovery program had come to full fruition with our outreach officer and our community paramedics. We've been allowed to do that ahead of fentanyl. I would have been very excited to see the great results, but it's still better than had we not been where we were. Operation Shielding Hope, a brand name from Chief Sharp, but the idea is in this picture, and it's in this picture in a bunch of ways. So we have an overdose call. Remember, there's 4 a week, and there's far more that we're not called to. Fire responds with a medic unit, EMTs and paramedics, law enforcement responds. Sometimes we get there first and deliver in the naloxone. Sometimes we deliver like 5 doses in the naloxone for everybody that's got some. There's often a resuscitation, but the way the drug works, and the way the situation works, and the way Washington works, very often that person in that picture stays there and says, "I don't need anything else from you guys. I'm breathing. I'm alive. I don't need your help." So there's many bad things about that. One is it's kind of awful to think about that person being left behind, but the drug problem isn't going to go away. The overdose, the potential for death isn't going to change at all. And what we've got with Operation Shielding Hope is we're going to be able to have a paramedic unit, social workers, case managers, and an outreach officer team to stay behind and address what needs to be addressed to keep that person from dying of an overdose or having that happen again. And that costs money, and that takes help, and it takes partnerships. Some of the dollar amounts there, through Column County, through OMC, and through the Association of Washington Cities, those are just pieces of the funding we've gotten. And it takes a lot of work to get that money, and it takes a lot of work to sustain those programs, but it's worth doing. If you remember how money works when you advocate for it, you don't get what you want to do what you want with it the way you want to do it. You get what the funder decides to give you in the way that, like legislators or policymakers, you have to be willing to cooperate. I mean, Mike's presentation was a great example of that. So we're really fortunate to have that. And I think the last thing I'm going to talk about briefly here, because Calvin knows I love talking about the police department and the fire department. Our Downtown Resource Officer program, Officer Moore is sitting right here, and there's people in the room, Manager West, Mayor Dexter, Jim Hagwood, Mark Abshire, and Kevin Gallardi from Transit. Their dogged determination and work is why Zach is sitting here. And thank you for appreciating his work. A number of interlocal agreements with neighbor agencies. We're doing that all the time. That's really the only way we get what we need done. Now, I threw some stats up here because, it's nice to be able to tell a story when things aren't as bad here as they are somewhere else. And if you're the person that had your car taken or you were assaulted and you had something destroyed last year, these numbers don't necessarily mean anything to you because it still happened to you. But we're going in the right direction, a lot of the stuff, and we'll take some of the credit for some of these changes in numbers. It's a complex story. For us, sometimes it's putting a bad guy in jail. That's what we need to do. That's what we want to do. Sometimes it's getting somebody into treatment services before they commit the crime. But the numbers in terms of how this affects your quality of life, they're going in the right direction. And I'll just finish up here. The people that we have in the fire department, in the police department, they're our most valuable resource. I can't say enough about them. When I get involved with advocating with the legislature, when I'm really not happy with policy and the direction it's going, and what we've been put through, it's really because of these people who we want to keep them, we want to recruit them, and you rely on them to do what they're doing, and they're glad to do it. Best practices, adopting, promoting, and the best law enforcement practices we can do. And the last thing is the balance of proactive policing and reactive policing. We know how to do both, and we're glad to do both. We don't apologize for being in a police department. Chief Vieta, when he comes to work on Monday, wants to see the jail full, but we also don't apologize for being out there and going the extra effort to help somebody who's in crisis. Like anything we can do to help somebody in crisis, we're going to do it. So with that, I'm sure I just went right under my time. Thanks, Calvin.
So now I want to shift gears back to a really important pillar to our 2024 budget, and that's environmental resilience. And I think it's so important to share with this group that the work that City Council and our Community and Economic Development Department did on our climate resiliency plan, it's trend-setting for the state of Washington. It's a big deal. They did it well. This is something that we care greatly about, and we're doing a lot to move forward with environmental resilience. So to start out with, one of the things that I want to highlight is we're now integrating some of those policies into our comprehensive plan. We've completed our first purchase of 3 fully electric vehicles, as well as more coming up in the very near future. And we've made a number of enhancements to our urban forest canopy. And I want to specifically talk more about that City Shade program. And Paul Forrest is here today. We are so grateful to Paul to care. So Paul cares enough about this community that he took it upon himself to create a nursery and grow hundreds of trees to ground truth and test the species that is the most resilient for our street tree system, to ensure that at the end of the day, we see an improved street tree canopy throughout the community. That's a huge deal. As he mentioned earlier, 140 free trees were provided due to his hard work. And then in addition to that, we're planning a new event this coming October. Couldn't be more excited, and please do come out and get a tree from Paul. Additionally, we're striving towards more environmental resilience, and Director Healy here has gone after a number of different electric vehicle charger grants, so we will exceed at least 50 plus new electric vehicle chargers introduced to the city. We've added an additional stormwater position at the city and invested in a new natural resources and grant planner position that really can help further some of these environmental resilience efforts that we're making. So time to look a little bit more detail on quality of life and some things that we should be really excited about in Port Angeles that are coming up. From a quality of life perspective, our senior center couldn't be in a more important facility. And as you may be aware, they have been very challenged in the extreme cold weather, extreme heat weather relative to their HVAC system. We've put forward a $2.6 million project that's been aided through a $350,000 tax credit and a $500,000 grant to replace that HVAC system, as well as incorporate solar panels and battery backup for the senior center. Really excited to see that program moving forward. So I want to share that the senior center, as well as many of the facilities I'm about to mention, they're part of our Parks Department, and the Parks Department manages over 300 acres and over 45 different facilities in town. That's a big deal. That's a lot to cover. And one of the major projects that they moved forward this year was a new investment in volunteer field. This new field ensures that our youth have the ability to play year-round despite the weather. This is a major change to have an artificial turf field in our community that's available for play despite the weather situation. And this came forward through a number of major donor sponsorships, as well as some grant opportunities that ultimately this community has come forward, just as they did in the very beginning with Volunteer Field. They came forward again to ensure that through partnerships and through volunteer efforts, we saw this field completed. Another one that's worth mentioning is the West Coast League, in conjunction with Matt Acker, lobbied hard at the legislature to find new ways to make investments in Civic Field, and through Director Delicott's work, we found a way to receive a grant for $600,000 for Civic Field, which will will enable us to put in play a new digital board at Civic Field, which is a big deal, as well as additional new seating behind home plate. So we're really excited about those new improvements. And then probably the most devastating news that I received in the last 4 months was the burning down of the Dream Playground. That couldn't be more painful to this community. All of you were probably out there sweating during the very challenging time that we all worked together on building that facility, and it couldn't have been more saddening to see that destroyed by the act of one individual. What I think is so worthy of celebrating, though, is the resilience that we saw by Steve Methner and the Dream Playground Foundation Board and our director, Corey Delicott, to show that resilience in bringing back a rebuild coming this May from the 14th through the 15th to the 19th of May. So amazing to see that resilience, so amazing to see unsolicited donations in the amount of $175,000 for this facility. And certainly we're very happy that insurance is able to cover a large portion of that, but no, there are other donation opportunities with the goal of getting even additional improvements to that facility. But I look forward to this summer getting out there and sweating some more and seeing this community come together at work for that particular playground. So, as you've heard me say many times before, I feel there's so much to celebrate with all the different things going on in this community. A major effort that we have seen is at the Erickson Playfield, and last year the Washington Recreation and Parks Association provided a spotlight award to that park. What is so amazing is every single facility that you see at that park, whether it's the pump track, the skate park, the tennis courts, the calisthenics area, all of those things, including the Dream Playground, are work done by all of you, ultimately volunteers in this community coming together to make it happen, and we ought to be celebrating that. I also am beyond excited to be sitting here in Field Hall. You never would have gotten me to believe that we could have raised over $50 million to build this facility. I am amazed at the quality of workmanship that's been carried forward by the Field Hall staff. We are so grateful the quality work that went into caring for this building and continues today in every single event that we see in this facility. That's a big deal, and I hope we all can treasure it. I can tell you, I have gone back and reviewed the many different conference center studies that we've seen throughout Port Angeles over the years. At the very least, back to the early 90s, we've been looking to build a conference center in this city, and I couldn't be happier to see that here today. Huge deal. So, amazing when you think about the amount of effort that goes into also starting new businesses in this community, and every year we see a new list of businesses who have taken the time to invest in making this community a better place. I want to mention that some of the ones to share here, Mix It Shack. This is an amazing new youth hangout that our youth talk about frequently. There are so many cool things for them to do there in addition to the ice cream and diversity that you get to see in that particular shop. I think it's great to see Angelus Millworks and Hartnaggles expand into Angelus Rentals in the old Sears building, but all of these are things to celebrate and major investments that we're so appreciative of the city, of the community. So I want to reemphasize the great work that the Chamber of Commerce and everyone has done for the Big Spring Spruce Up. That's scheduled again for May of this year. And we think it's so valuable that the community come out, get engaged, and help clean up the downtown area for that cleanup effort. So finally, I think every year you all have heard me share a challenge with you of something that I think is really important that our community should focus on over the next year. And I think it's so important that across this nation, we're seeing much larger communities than ours face media desert situations. For that reason, I could not be more grateful to have KONP, Radio Pacific, and Peninsula Daily News working with us daily to help communicate to the community members and all the constituents that care about what is going on at the city. They are our conduit for information to all of you, and I think it's so important that we help support them. As we see social media erode the revenue models of them, we need to ensure that we are all stepping up to support them, because that is such an important means of communication from government to the citizen. Thank you all very much.